Soon, Amanda, we'll be speaking with Ed Sarpolus, correct? He's on the line. Well, there we go. All right. Ed, good morning. Ed Sarpolus with Target Insights, one of the leading pollsters in Michigan. Are your numbers any different as far as the gubernatorial race or what we're seeing this morning?
No. We've had Rick Snyder's been up leading by double digit now since August. Really hasn't been a change. And that's partly due is that Virg Bernal hasn't had the ability to define himself before the electorate. Rick Snyder had such a hard lead in fundraising and dollars that Virg has been playing catch-up for the last 2 months. And then it's sort of the Democratic mood of stay-home voters really has hurt the Democrats. So, yeah, Rick Snyder has had this solid lead now for the last several months.
A lot of questions, Ed, and you're the guy to ask about this. When it comes to polling, you do it primarily over telephone, correct?
Yes, primary telephone. That's the main thing. Now,
so, are you hitting mostly the landlines, or are you starting to break into cell phones? Because people are saying that if you're just calling landlines, you're missing all the young people, many of whom don't have a landline. You've certainly heard that argument before.
Well, you do. Well, you have to start incorporate cell phones, and you build those into your sample design. The more sophisticated polling, if there's a budget to do that, you need to incorporate some web polling into that. But basically, it's landline and cell phones today.
All right. It just sounds like there's really not a lot to say with respect to the race for governor. Is there any indication? Snyder apparently, from what we hear, is outspending Virg Bernal in this race, and that means a lot more television advertising for Rick Snyder. Is there any way to gauge what impact that extra spending has?
Well, it's had a major impact ever since if you look at back in the primary. The Virg Bernal basically won because the last 2 weeks he was able to get the defined Andy Dillon. And so when Democrats want to vote for him, that's all he's been able to do. And you look at polling numbers, the lack of who Virg Bernal. If you ask voters who Virg Bernal is, they know of him, but they don't know who he is, what he stands for completely, what his background is, and because of that, that's really hurt him amongst voters.
And Rick Snyder was essentially unknown when this process began, say, 6 months ago.
Well, that's truly, but you got to remember he's been up since the Super Bowl with his first ad, the Nerd ad, and that's really benefited him as being the outsider, the different person. That's because of electoral mood going on this year. And he's been up there ever since, defining himself, who he is, what he's, where his background. He has not made any missteps in the debate. He's not really taken any major positions on any issues. And that's really benefited him over this whole last year.
Ed Sarpolus, our guest with Target Insights, political pollster extraordinaire. Ed, what other races are you keeping an eye on?
Well, actually, not only you've got I think the key races coming up are the Supreme Court races. Those have got little attention because they're down the ballot. And when you got legislative congressional redistricting coming up, the judicial races are very important. Supreme Court races. You've got Supreme Court incumbent Ed Young. You've got the Democrat Davis, the incumbent the last several months because of the changeover. Those will be key races. Will there be a switchover because if the Republicans control the Supreme Court? That can have an influence on the court decisions, especially in redistricting. And then you got all these congressional races. You talked about the Schauer-Walberg race. You've got the Gary Peters-Wachkowski race. You've got the McDowell.
How's that going, Peters and Rocky down there?
Well, what's interesting is that all these races are very close. Like the Schauer-Walberg race, Peters in the last several recent polls have been leading Wachkowski by a few points. And so all these will come down to turnout next Tuesday. And Republicans are spending heavily on these because they sense that there's a chance to regain these seats.
Well, it's to me it's interesting because all I've been hearing for the last couple of months, anyways, is that it's going to be a Republican tidal wave in this year's midterm elections, and yet here, at least in Michigan, we still see some Democrats hanging on.
Well, they are hanging on because, well, first of all, what they did the last 2 years is they were able, even though they're freshmen, they did a lot of grassroots, they did a lot of outreach, and they did early on outspend the Republican challenger, and they did grassroots, and that's the reason why they're holding on now. There's no guarantee they're going to win, but they're in much better shape because of the grassroots that they've done over the last 2 years.
Now, how much is there any way to get again back to the spending? Because to me, that's such a key issue, especially this year, because this is our first election post. Citizens United, which essentially is allowing corporations to spend as much money as they want to on political races, and they don't have to identify where the money's coming from. That's been a huge controversy. There's no question about that. But my question is, again, the Republicans seem to be outspending Democrats in some cases 7, 8, 9 to 1.
Oh, it is true. true. Now, in the case of the Mark Wahlberg race, Wahlberg would not even be in the race if it wasn't for outsiders' money. He has not raised anywhere near the amount of money that Mark Schauer did for his own campaign. This has all been special interest money, and that's the reason why Wahlberg's in the race. Nationally, you're looking at Republicans have spent buku bucks all around the state, and that's what's made the major difference here in the state on the close thing. They have been outspent, but in the case of Mark Wahlberg, Mark Schauer has been able to compete with Wahlberg's special interest money coming into the state.
All right, so those are what are again? We looked at these two congressional races: the Gary Peters and Rocky Ruskowski down in suburban Detroit, actually down near where I live, and Mark Wahlberg and Schauer here in this area. What else is up for grabs?
Well, the other else is grabs is the state legislative races. You're looking at the fact that there's a possibility will the Democrats control the state House of Representatives. They had 67 seats. They picked up a major number of seats 2 years ago under the Obama election. The race was very close. There's we read today and yesterday that the House Democrats have taken out a $500,000 loan to get through this last week of the campaign because state legislative control of the state House is up for grabs. It's assumed that the Senate Republicans will retain control of the state Senate, but the state House it could also go Republican this year.
What are the implications of that?
Well, it's a lot because the Republicans control all three chambers. That means the Republican agenda will be what we'll have for the next 2 to 4 years, potentially 8 years. There again, redistricting. Republicans control the pen, so they could draw seats that would be very hard for Democrats to ever win in this state for up to a decade. That could impact legislation on a whole bunch of different things in this state. It could impact on labor unions. It could impact on a number of different things. Republicans maintain this anti-revenue mode, keep cutting. Cities and townships could be hurt because more revenue trusts will be hurting. But a lot of things can be changed. If you control the pen, you control the policymakers. That changes the whole direction that the state's been going in for the last 8 years.
How different has this particular midterm been than others you've been involved in polling? And I ask that question primarily because of the impact of the Tea Party, so-called.
Well, what the Tea Party has done is that in Michigan, the Tea Party is predominantly Republicans. What we're seeing this time around here, when you look at the Tea Party movement, that has been the activist Republicans who want to show up and vote. In 2008 and in 2006, it's the Democrats who were motivated to get out and vote. In 2008, some nearly 500,000 Republicans in Michigan sat out the election for 2008, which allowed the Democrats to gain a significant number of state House seats and congressional pickups, and also the presidential race. This time around, the Democrats appear to be sitting out this election, not as motivated as the Republicans. So the Tea Party, which is the activist portion of the Republican Party, because they're really more Republican, that's basically replaced what the Democrats did in 06 and then 08.
It's always struck me as odd. I always go back to what Benjamin Franklin said at the conclusion of the Constitutional Convention when he was asked by a citizen, well, Mr. Franklin, what sort of government have you given us? And he said, madam, a republic or a democracy if you can keep it. And it seems to me, that's still an open question here 225 years later, especially when you've got people staying at home come election time.
Well, that's been always the problem. And for all of us who did Government 101 or government from high school, we were told that this is a participatory form of government. If we don't get out and vote, we get what we deserve. We get what we don't vote on. And so it's very important for voters to get out and vote. And otherwise, then you get one party swing from Democrat to Republican. And in some cases, if you go back when Ross Perot was running, there was a point where the mood had shifted. Their third party was beginning to gain ground. And this is where the Tea Party is looking to try to do the same thing as the Ross Perot party did, was to basically make a foothold and begin to create sort of this new movement of a new group of people saying, hey, we want our voices heard.
Well, there you have it. Ed, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Thanks for the insight. Before we let you go, does Bonero have any chance at all here to make up that kind of deficit in 5 days? Did President Clinton's visit on Sunday to stump for him, did that have any effect at all?
Well, it does have an impact because now the question is, can Bonero win? Well, you always have that opportunity. Snyder can make mistakes. There can be a mood shift. What's important with the governor's race is because the closer that Burge Bonero makes this race with Rick Snyder, that will help Democrats further down the ticket, either congressional races or state legislative races or judicial races. And so Burge Bonero cannot give up whether you believe he's going to win or not. The point being the fact is that there are coattail effects, and so you don't want to. No party wants a large victory by the other party because it impacts not only that race but the races down the ticket.
All right, Ed, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, Ed Sarpolus from Target Insights, the polling organization, and his results, as we say, mirroring those that we see in the Detroit News published today. That Rick Snyder has a huge lead. I mean, not just double digits, but 18 points over Verge Bonero. And one would think, yeah, I mean, I asked the question, is there any chance he can make that up? But I believe that unless the polling is enormously flawed, there's just no way you make up an 18-point difference in a matter of 5 days. So we shall see. The election is still on Tuesday. And the other thing that is problematic here is when you talk about something like that, then people say, oh, well, it's already decided. There's no point in going out to the polls. Well, people, again, participatory democracy, there's always a reason to go to the polls. And we've had some remarkable examples of why that's important here just in the last 10 years or so. So make sure you go out and vote. I know we say it all the time, but that is what you